what is a atheist and what is an agnostic? Like in simple terms.
An atheist is simply somebody who just does not believe that God exists. Atheism is the complete opposite of theism. As theists, we believe that God does exist, that he is real. He is the uncreated creator. He is the unmoved mover. He is the unoriginated originator. God does exist. The atheist does not ascribe to the belief that there is a God. They just wholeheartedly practice their whole worldview is based upon a godless centered view. The agnostic believes that there's not enough evidence for him or her to believe that God does exist. They sometimes struggle with the belief that there might be a possibility of a God that does exist, but at the same time, they just feel that they don't have enough evidence, or science has not provided enough evidence for them to believe that God exists.
Yeah, so that's good. So speaking of evidence, so why is there no empirical evidence for God's existence? Now, this question raises the question of verifiability, questioning why there is no scientifically proof of God's existence. So I know you spoke about, how the atheists, they don't even believe in God. But agnostics believe that it could be a possibility, but based on evidence, they need to see something like, So why is there no empirical evidence of God's existence?
Well, honestly, Brother Nick, I think the question really beckons the more of a specific question is what tangible, material items or evidence is there to show that God does exist? That's more of what the question is asking.
Right.
Because anytime we talk about empirical evidence, now we're getting into, of course, the field of science. You being a scientist know that empirical evidence is what backs everything that you do, everything that you practice. And of course, when we're talking about an uncreated creator, when we're talking about the unmoved mover, one of the things I like to just even break down, even give credence to is Genesis 1:1. And it's hard to believe any of the rest of the Bible if you don't get Genesis 1:1. But Genesis 1:1, that very first verse, gives the whole entire encompassing of science itself. In the beginning, that's time. God, that's force. Created, that's action. The heaven, that's the earth, the universe, and the heavens and the earth, that's matter. Now, if we take just the very first beginning, in the beginning, who started the time clock?
God.
There had to be somebody outside of time that initiated time. So if they couldn't be within time and start time,
Right.
and create time. We know that unless there is something outside of the existence of time, which then we get into eternity.
Yeah.
They had to be outside time to create time, henceforth in the beginning. And also, if there was a beginning, there had to be a beginner. And so literally contrast is the mother to definition, and we know that science reason from cause to effect. And so time is the effect what caused it.
I like that.
And so then it beckons the question, who is this individual that started time? In the beginning. Then it says God. God is the force of all things.
Wow.
Think about that, Brother Nick.
That is amazing, man. And even just listening to your take on Genesis 1:1, as a scientist, as you alluded to, I thought about this question. And even when I think about for the atheists or even agnostics that even posing these questions, because these questions are like frequently asked questions.
Oh, yeah.
That are asked about it because they trying to figure God out, like put God in an experiment.
Come on.
So even like when I think about empirical evidence, I said empirical evidence came about in the 16th, 17th centuries. So this is something that came out during the scientific revolution. So when people, it's kind of like how you said, you went all the way back to Genesis 1, but according to science history, scientific revolution was really initiated around the 1700s, where they looked at verifiability, like we talked about objectives and observation, and there was like two different type of studies that they pretty much did, and those studies were stemmed from like qualitative data. So when you talk about qualitative data, you're talking about data like from interviews or surveys, or even quantitative data where they're using numerical values to collect data. So during the 16th century, so you talk about individuals that pioneered, were the pioneers of the scientific revolution, like Francis, Galileo, and even Isaac. You know, so these came like way after the Bible, and even like Galileo, he was one of the ones that he was an astronomer, so he was like caught up with the stars and this and that, and then he refuted the ecocentric system, and then of course that Catholic Church didn't like that. They didn't like that. They literally put him in house arrest for the rest of his life. So even when you talking about when you went back to Genesis, that's why I like how you went back to Genesis. So if anybody trying to come against like the argument of, okay, why there's no empirical evidence, so we could argue that empirical evidence was stemmed from or originated from the 16 to 1700s, where the beginning goes like all the way back. So they got to go all the way back to what you said. So I like how you pointed out that in the beginning, God created, you know, so in the beginning, which is the beginning time. But I know you really want to unpack that verse, so continue to do so because it's real good.